First and foremost, thank you so much for allowing me to join you all today. It was really neat. I shared this. This was at MacStock that I presented this originally in its original form, and it was quite the honor for Linda to ask for me to join and present to all of you. So, thank you. And a digital handout with all today's major points and links and resources. It'll all be available at the end of the presentation. So those of you who like to take notes or jot down a bunch of things, of course, you're more than welcome to. But this will all be available yeah, at the very end as well. So without further ado, um, so a little bit of a quick bio about myself. Again, honored to be here. I live in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. Just to kind of give a little perspective of where I'm at. I'm an educator that primarily works with at-risk youth. I have a teaching background in economics. In my role at work, I mentor a lot of staff and students. And you may be familiar with a few places I've been on. A regular panelist on Mac Voices with Chuck Joyner. And I've made past appearances on for Mac Eyes Only, In Touch with iOS, and Vision Profiles. So here, so this kind of gets into my little bit of my educator background. I always have an agenda and an objective. So today we're going to be looking at a couple of bullet points. We're going to be looking at the benefits of automating and the importance of learning. And the goal is for everybody in here to be able to walk away with being able to implement more automating in their lives and also have tools for a growth mindset and being a lifelong learner. So I found this quote, and I'm not quite sure who said it originally, but I really like it, and I think it really summarizes a lot of, especially this first half of the presentation, and that is automate what drains you so you can share more of what defines you. And we'll go ahead and take a look at benefits of automating. Being here with a group of Apple-focused people, I know that when we use that word automate or the automator, thinking about the app shortcuts, I'm kind of using a little bit more of a broad definition of automation. And I'm looking here at the definition of automatically controlled operations of an apparatus, process, or system by mechanical or electronic devices that take the place of human labor. And so I'm really looking at it in a bigger scale than just the Apple ecosystem necessarily, but just the whole mindset of being able to automate things that occupy our lives and how we can spend our time better, focus on other things. So starting off with some automating with some built-in software. One thing that I think we can really consider in helping ourselves be more efficient is with time. Uh, Being able to free up time is huge, right? You know, they say that what time is money, right? We only have so many hours in the day. And by being able to free up time that we spend on repetitive, low value tasks, it allows us more time on the other direction to be able to focus on strategic or creative work. And so here's something built in that we all have. It's the a built-in text replacement. And I'm very familiar with, some of the very powerful software out there, like Text Expander and how you can write aspects in Keyboard Maestro. But this is already built in. It's something simple. And so if you're looking for a thing to basically save you some time, if there's something that you often type in often, you can type in a shorter set of characters. And when you type in that shorter amount of characters, it'll replace it with that longer phrase instead. And the nice thing is you can use this on the Mac, and it's also available on iOS and the iPad as well. So something that's really helpful. Another thing that I think is important as far as the benefit of automating is it can help us improve our accuracy. So we can reduce error in tasks like data entry and calculations. And looking at numbers is a great example of a way that we can use this. So again, the built-in software on all of our Macs. So Numbers is that spreadsheet app from Apple, and this is a great way to improve accuracy. So on the left side, you'll notice that I typed in a couple of dates, and then if I want to continue, typing in those dates, of course I could, right? So it starts with July 10th, July 11th. I can continue with July 12th and 13th, and so on. But if you select a couple of cells and then drag them at the corner, you can add more cells that have that same sequence of the dates. And that helps not only with saving time, but also with the accuracy where you're less likely to make an error. Another example is on the right. You can do the same thing with saving time and accuracy with the months, just like you can with the dates. And then another thing you could do is, of course, use the sum formula. So if you're adding a bunch of numbers together, you can just, again, be able to use a formula to be able to figure out what the sum is of selected cells that have numbers in them. And it's just another way to, I think, be a little bit more accurate and to reduce a little bit of human error. So these are a couple of benefits of automating. Another thing that might be a benefit to automate is being able to save. And so to put money aside for the future. And sticking true with what we were talking about earlier, built in, we have the savings using the combination of the Apple Card and its savings account and Apple Pay. So a lot of credit cards have rewards. You get various, percentages back. Maybe it's cash back, maybe it's for travel, that type of thing. In particular for Apple, and of course this is, at the moment, because we know that the Apple Card is going to be taken over instead of by Goldman Sachs. Instead, it's going to, I believe, by Chase. And so, some of this might be outdated relatively soon. But at least for now, when you use your Apple Card, you get 3% back when you shop at Apple, and you get 2% back when you use your Apple Card using Apple Pay. And then if you use the physical, that titanium card, you get 1% back. And there's a couple other perks here and there that are sometimes temporary, but those are kind of your mainstays. So in addition, Apple also has a savings account where you can automatically deposit those earnings of that cash back. And in addition, just like most savings accounts, it earns interest. I was looking at mine today, and it looks like I believe it's still at 3.65%, and it kind of follows, inflow of when bank rates go up and down. It does tend to follow that. Right now, knock on wood, it's a little higher than a lot of your brick and mortar banks. But of course, again, this could be a little outdated when the takeover happens with Chase. Saving is one of those things too. I'm thinking just about how, like, for many, the aspects related to like building a habit kind of work out. A lot of people say they want to save for something, but the actual action of doing it is harder, I think. But when it becomes an automated process, and it becomes something that you don't have to think about, it just automatically happens. I think we're a lot more likely to make it happen and to let it stick and let it become a really powerful tool because of compound interest and the way that it adds up over time. So I thought that was a good benefit of being able to automate for a couple of reasons. Another one is consistency. So this helps to ensure that a repetitive task isn't missed. A lot of times I find that if something is repetitive and we keep doing it over and over again, of course it builds a good habit. But if we kind of go on that full automation mode and we're not thinking of something, we may accidentally miss it itself because we're not really focused on it. I think about sometimes, if you're driving around in the same area, you might be almost like thinking to yourself, well, how did I get from point A to point B if it's that same route you take over and over again? Because you're not as dialed in necessarily and thinking about every move. So the power of consistency is pretty powerful. One of the things that I found pretty helpful for something that's repetitive is the health app. And in particular, within the health app, there's a medication reminder. And this is a great way to input whatever medications you may need to take. And it's helpful because it not only records um, the necessity of taking it on a regular basis, whatever time schedule you put in. But if you take different pills at different times of the day, it does have that sophistication of being able to have different pills at different times as necessary. And on the screen, if it comes through okay, you can even see that particular day. It looks like there was at least two pills that needed to be taken. So the circle is a semicircle filled halfway because still shows that day is not complete with regards to the pills that need to be taken that day. So it's something that could be helpful. So another benefit of automation. Another area of that's helpful to automate is just the aspect related to stress. Being able to eliminate the mental load of remembering and performing mundane but important tasks. And this can help to really build better mental well-being. Um, the example that I used here is using the Reminders app. And the Reminders app, it's an incredibly useful tool. It helps us to remember different tasks that we have to do. And one thing that I really like is the fact that you can set up recurring tasks. So, I've got a lot of different routines that I use on a regular basis. Some of these things are things that I do every day. Some are every few days, once every few days, even some that are like once every 3 months. So, for example, on a daily basis, that you can do like some fun ones in there too. So, if there's a particular article that you like to read every day, um, I'm just remembering my audience here in California. So, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, and I'm really disappointed that they lost last week. But I do enjoy reading a published article that they publish 5 or 6 times a week, and where people write in and they ask questions and they get answers and things of that nature just for fun. So it's one of those things that I always put on there. I got to remember to read that article that day. So if my day gets busy, I'll make sure that I still read it. Um, it can be useful for things like I've got a water flosser that has a like an external like a reservoir bottle to like fill it up with water. And it holds about 3.5 days worth of water. So every 3 days, I have a reminder set to fill up my bottle. So I make sure that it's all filled up because, of course, when I'm ready to go to bed and I'm ready to brush my teeth and so forth, that's the last thing I want to do is to not have that already filled up. Um, some things could be like connected to finances. So like for utility and credit cards, I have a recurring bill, a reminder, make sure you pay the electricity bill, double check, did you pay it? Things of that nature. So even if I have it set automatically with a bank or a utility service to automatically pay, it's just one of those things just to, it takes an extra second, just log in, see that it's paid, check it off your list. So, things of that nature. So again, just a stress reduction. So things that we don't have to worry about and kind of can bring down our stress. Another area that's a benefit to automating is enhanced productivity. So this is where we can shift our focus from repetitive tasks to things of high priority work to boost our overall productivity. So automation tools like Apple's Focus Mode can really help out with this. So for example, and using this type of aspect. I love the focus modes. It allows us to be in one sense, maybe you don't want to be rude in a setting where you have your ringer on, for example, on your phone, and you don't want your phone to make sounds in an environment that should be quiet. And that's at its most basic level. But there's all sorts of different settings that you can make on here. For example, I found it beneficial that when I drive to work every day, I want to make sure that I go into what I call work focus. And so this work focus basically makes sure I don't get notifications from all sorts of apps and all different sorts of people, but it's very limited, just the individuals that can break through and be able to notify me in certain apps that I'm okay with. And something kind of fun, you can do multiple ways when it goes into effect and when it takes you out of that work focus. I put both the geofence on, so like when I'm close to work, it turns on, and like geographically. And then I also have it by time because sometimes I might be there early, sometimes staying late, sometimes on the weekends. So I don't necessarily always have it just on one mode or the other. Sometimes if there's ever an opportunity to work remotely, but I still want to be in that work focus while I'm working remote at home, I want to keep that option as available too. So you can turn on multiple aspects to turn on and to turn off your focus modes. So that's something that I found helpful. Another benefit of automating is the empowerment through data. Automating data collection and analysis provides actionable insights without having a whole lot of extra effort needed. So, for example, I love the incredible amounts of health and fitness information that we can gather, that a lot of it happens behind the scenes. So through this data that's being brought in, it can really empower us to take actions with it, so we can, reach whatever health goals that we may want. So here are some examples that I pulled in that you can have immediately by having an iPhone and an Apple Watch. The health app on the left, it kind of shows an example report of your sleep patterns. So some people want to, charge their Apple Watch overnight. I'm one that tends to want to charge it, not necessarily at night, maybe in the evening before going to bed. I'll have it all charged up, and then I'll make sure I put it back on before going to bed. And I really want to see that sleep data. So it'll tell you little spikes of when you might have woken up in the middle of the night in different levels of what your sleep patterns were. And the magic is that over time, you can see how things have improved or not improved. You can see different actions in your day to see that and how the effects are on your sleep. In the middle, we see trends overall in the fitness app. It shows, related to exercise and different characteristics of exercise, like your average exercise minutes, maybe how much distance you moved per day. It'll tell you your walking and running pace and others. So you can really take a look at this. And if you have a goal for yourself, being able to take actionable steps to be able to try to improve those. And then lastly, on the right, we have the Apple Watch. In this screen in particular, it shows rings. So you can see the move, stand, and exercise rings, and just to see how close you are to be able to fill it up. So this really is instant feedback that you can use to make decisions related to actions that you can use to, to close up those rings. Okay, so this one was kind of a fun one. I found one, eco-friendliness. This is an interesting one where another automation that you can do in your life to reduce waste through efficient resource use. So this is relatively simple. You can use automations in the Home app to control your lights and plugs. And I have one of those 5-gallon water coolers at home, and there's nothing more refreshing. Coming home in the summertime, especially in Phoenix, where our temperatures can get up to, like 120. It's where it gets really, really hot, and coming in and just getting a cold glass of water. So our temperatures can get pretty warm, and the thing is, running that motor on the water cooler, it's needed obviously to chill the water. But when there's nobody home in the middle of the day, I don't need that thing to run. And I don't need that thing to run all night either. I just need it to run maybe a half an hour before I get home or half an hour before I wake up, and then only run for a few hours and then be able to turn off later in the evening. So this is something that you can set up. So a power of automation. If I had to, flip the switch manually every day and forget to power it back on, that type of thing, it could become frustrating. Or if you think about in the morning, if I want a cold glass of water in the morning, I'm going to utilize that extra half hour before I even wake up to be able to get that cold water going. You could do the same type of thing to lamps. If you put in either a plug into your outlet and then connect your lamp to it, or you can do the smart bulbs and you can connect those as well. Put them onto a schedule where they're turning on and off at appropriate times during the day. Again, just as something that you can use to save energy. So eco-friendliness there as well. So just transitioning. So switching over now, we spent the first part of the presentation really kind of focusing on the importance of automating different things in your life. So now I'm going to focus not on the aspect of taking shortcuts and automating, but the stress of the importance of learning. And I want to illustrate this through the scenic route versus the interstate highway. So let's say you have to go and you're going to travel and you're going to travel for a few hours, and you have the option. You could take the interstate highway. Maybe that highway, interstate highway, using Apple Maps is going to be faster. But if you have the opportunity where time isn't as important, there's a lot of other aspects that could be missing if you don't take the scenic route. So if you take that shortcut, right, by going faster, you might miss out. So you might miss out on some of the stories of all the very interesting, quirky small towns or things that you find along that journey. The context of what was in the conversations in the car, what happened, on that journey. The power of discovery, where you find an interesting turnoff that you didn't recognize before, or a detour that turns out to be really great, and a restaurant that you never got a chance to eat at and wouldn't have if you would have taken the big interstate highway. And it really draws in those emotional connections. So there's a lot of power to the importance of learning. Um, Strengthening our mental muscles. So important aspects learned in kindergarten. So let's think back to kindergarten, right? It could be 4 or 5 years old, and what were some of those memories of things that you might have learned from way back then? Well, do you in kindergarten, do you remember solving quadratic equations? Or or in kindergarten, do you remember writing a big argumentative essay? And make sure you cite three sources. Well, no, I didn't either, right? Of course, that's not something that we're going to expect a 4 or 5 year old to do. Those are skills that you've learned later on. But in those first few grade levels of elementary school, you built those foundational blocks, right? Sometimes the literal building blocks, sometimes just the figurative blocks, right? And it's all about how you can scaffold that basic information and build more so that you can tackle more complex tasks in the future, right? So if we're looking at learning in those skills in school, we start to learn other skills that are connected to it. And it really becomes ingrained to be able to automatically recall something. So, if you ask yourself or somebody asks you, what's 2 plus 2? Well, 4, right? Well, what's 7 times 5? 35. What's 72 divided by 9? Well, it's 8. Okay. Well, I didn't sit there and calculate it and figure it all out. How did you know it so quickly? For me, in school, you learn first how to add, then you learned how to subtract. And then when it came to multiplication, you learned what multiplication is, why it, how it works. But shortly thereafter, it's a lot of that rote memorization. Same type of idea for division. So now I'm going to give you a series of numbers, and I want you to think to yourself what the average is. Okay? So here are your series of numbers: 15, 17, 12, 16, 11. So again, that's 15, 17, 12, 16, and 11. So now we got to figure out what is the average of those series of numbers. Is it 3.7? Is it 14.2? Or is it 45.8? And I bet you figured out the answer, even without using a calculator. It's 14.2. So how did you know? Well, sometimes, you just have to think, does it make sense? And so sometimes what we learn in the importance of learning is about being able to understand why and figuring out things that may or may not impact you right away now can pay dividends in the future. It can help us in kind of other related areas. And here's an example of something that I think kind of ties in. There's a lot of research that says that about 1/3 of the big lottery winners are going to sometime in the future declare bankruptcy. And that's pretty astounding, right? When you think about, you see on the news all those big winners of, multiple millions of dollars of winnings, right? Um, Research says this is true for many just 3 to 5 years after winning multiple millions of dollars. And there's also many lottery winners who have trouble saying no. Again, there's people out there, they're saying, hey, you just won. It wouldn't do you any harm if you gave me some of that money, right? And while the requests of all these different wants from people are unlimited, obviously that supply of funds is not unlimited. It's very, very much limited. So sometimes the choices that and lifestyle changes that these lottery winners will make can have ongoing fees and taxes. The maintenance of a building or property taxes, things of that nature, that they may or not calculate. Why is this? Well, a lot of people who are winning these lotteries, they may not have such a strong background in financial literacy. And so not understanding has implications of investment options, tax implications, all these things that could go really, really wrong, right? So that lack of that discipline and knowledge where you build up that skill over time is you can really see really washes away. Another important thing is, as I mentioned earlier, besides financial literacy, there's other things that we can develop in order to use later on. So, critical thinking and problem solving. So, unlike in school, we don't operate in the world where all the word problems are pre-designed for us, right? It's just life and life happens. So, a critical skill that we need to learn and continue to improve is thinking and problem solving. It helps us to be able to navigate misinformation and to try and understand complex challenges that are faced not only by us individually, but those in society as well. A little bit about data literacy, right? So we talked earlier about when we were talking about the benefits of automating, is seeing all that wealth of data that our phones and our software on our computers is bringing in, all of that information. But if we don't know how to read it, it's hard to be able to figure out what next. What actions can we take based on that data? There's also skills related to emotional intelligence. We live and work in a very interdependent world, and we are by nature social creatures. A lot of our successes really depends on how we interact with other people. And so how we communicate, how we best work with others, really conveys, what needs to be said and how it needs to, how we conduct ourselves working with others allows us to be able to move things forward, whether it's something social, something like a project at work, those types of things. Talking about cultural competence, that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. When we work across diverse teams, and especially in the nowadays globally, working with others really requires different levels of sensitivity to different perspectives in norms that may not be the same as ours. So I always also consider another important skill is resilience, because today's a great day. I'm having an awesome day. It's fantastic, but not every day is a great day. Some days we wake up and we're not feeling well. Things aren't right, whether that's something from within or something external. But by having that resilience, being able to take that bad day, know that it's temporary, to be able to turn things around is definitely an important skill, and it's another aspect of learning. I put this one in here. This is just more of a personal one, and I won't spend a ton of time on here. But just in the past 18 months, the importance of learning is to always understand I may not know how to do something yet. And so, I just highlighted a few projects on here. I have the Ring security system for a lot of my cameras, and I didn't like how it couldn't connect to Apple Home. So I started asking questions, and Jeff Gamet and Kelly Gumont, who you might know from a different podcast, they were really helpful. I was talking to them, and they said, "Hey, try this thing called Homebridge," and they started talking to me the Raspberry Pi little computer, and both of those are things I had no idea about. And being able to communicate with them and know that you don't know it yet, and to be able to rely on asking others for help and have that vulnerability to know I don't know it yet. Mike Potter, the guy who runs MacStock, And he, a web wizard. And I was thinking about setting up a website, and I didn't know the first thing about it. And so I picked his brain a little bit about it. He helped me out and gave me a couple pointers. Um, Discord, that's another one. If Discord is kind of like think of it like a message board on steroids if you're not familiar with it. It allows you to communicate back and forth with others and even set up live audio and video. And it's a great communication tool. But I was asked to be able to set one up to help out somebody who wanted to communicate with their podcast fans. And so I had a couple people I reached out to that were much more knowledgeable than I, and they were able to set that up with me. And then I even started up my own podcast. I give kudos out to some of you guys might know Marty Gencius, Dave Ginsburg, and Chuck Joyner. Real helpful at setting me up and just being able to lend an ear when I had a question because those questions do come up. So again, I wanted to mention too just the reliance on not just self-learning, but also the learning of how important it is to be able to communicate with each other and to have that vulnerability to know I don't know it yet, but I'm willing to ask questions. Um, the importance of learning at work. So work-based at school and at work where I am, I work a lot with the Office products and Windows. Unfortunately, in my opinion, is the platform of choice, and it's something I just have to learn more and more about. So, in particular, I just wanted to highlight there was an Excel document that was used to share amongst our staff how students are doing in different areas. And we update it on a weekly basis. And I'm the facilitator of that meeting and I'm the facilitator of that spreadsheet that gets updated. And one thing that we found very helpful was that we invited others to share how can we make this more powerful? What's some data that you would want shown on the spreadsheet and give a better picture of how students are doing and what actions we can take to improve outcomes. And so one thing that I built was a suggestion box, which is just a tab, and it included all the suggestions that my colleagues had suggested. And some things were relatively easy. They were just wanting different pieces of data to be put onto the sheet. But some of them required some pretty complex formulas and that type of thing. And they didn't know how complex their question was until I started telling them, hey, this is going to take a few seconds for me to figure this out. So being able to go through different, how-to guides and YouTube videos and things like that to really help me was helpful too. So I wanted to just throw that in there as well. And then I put in this one here about broader life and cognitive benefits. This is really kind of out of my current wheelhouse, but I wanted to share a couple of aspects related to learning and some of the health benefits that are related to learning. There was a study at Mayo Clinic, and they noted that having a lifetime of intellectual lifetime enrichment throughout life is increasingly viewed as a proactive strategy against cognitive decline in the older population. And so there's some medical research that's connected here. And then the Johns Hopkins study showed that there is a correlation of higher levels of education and a lower risk of dementia. And so at the end of the presentation, I'll have the QR code that has this whole presentation up, and I have links to those studies. So if you're interested to check that out. All right. Like any great Apple presentation, we have one more thing. And this is just a couple of thoughts on AI. So if you're not familiar with it, there's standards in education are going through some changes, and they have been probably for the last decade or so. Um, those unfamiliar with the term, Bloom's taxonomy, it's named after Benjamin Bloom, who in 1956 created a framework to categorize educational goals. So basically, you can see this pyramid that's on screen. Basically, you have at the very bottom, you have aspects related to remember, understand, and then it moves up to applying this knowledge, analyzing it, evaluating it, and creating it. And so, as educators, you get better learning outcomes when you're asking your students to do more things at the top of the pyramid rather than at the bottom. It sticks a lot better, and it's more applicable to other things in addition to the content that they're learning. And so I just brought in a couple of examples. This is an example of Arizona social studies standard that was in place from 2006 to 2018, and it had to do with the Great Depression and World War II. And you'll notice some of those the verbs of understand and remember are kind of similar to asking what the student to be able to do something here. They're asking them to be able to, and I underlined it in red, describe the causes, and then the performance objective to describe the impact. So to be able to describe something is a pretty low level area of Bloom's taxonomy. The applicability of what you're asking somebody to do is pretty low. And so they may remember it, maybe hopefully, but for the test, but maybe not much after that. This is what's been in place now since 2018. And so I know it might be a little bit small on the screen there, but the red underlines, you're starting to see some of those higher level areas of Bloom's taxonomy. You're asking students to be able to focus on inquiry, allow for depth of content. You're assessing similarities, you're drawing conclusions, you're using evidence to do something, you're analyzing, you're creating and supporting arguments. So you're getting a much richer, deeper level of questioning when you go through and you're educating students on these topics. You can, if you're using the top half of the pyramid, you're getting things that are generally going to stick better and they're going to be more applicable in different settings. And so when I tie in this whole concept of these updated standards and I think about AI and what it's doing in the world of education, I think about kind of the evolution of where we were and where we're going. It wasn't too many decades ago where teachers would say something about calculators, saying that you need to learn this because you're not always going to have access to that calculator, right? That calculator is not going to be able to be on you all the time. Well, that changed, right? Thinking about internet searches and research, we really changed from physical to digital media for research. And then there was another evolution even within that statement because now the internet is at your fingertips, as before you had to go somewhere to get to that internet, right? That maybe if it was in your household, maybe it was that one room that was connected, had a computer connected to the internet, or if it was in a research library, being able to go to a place to access the internet. Some of our first smart assistants, the early, we'll call it the A lady, who was, very simple requests of asking inquiry statements. If you were asking, who was the first president of the United States, and it would come back, the first president of the United States was George Washington. So, I started to think, is this a question I would want to ask a student? If they can just ask the research or the smart assistant, should I be asking a different question? And so that's kind of where I started thinking about things because now we're into generative AI where we continue to ask our questions in education of, what skills we want students to know when they're graduating high school and beyond, right? I really thought about, we should be designing lessons to learn, not just to complete a task, not just to check a box. Being able to ask students to narrate their decision-making process, design tasks that require students to explain a change or a choice they're making, provide students that feedback of how that changes and how they might respond next time, and to be able to assign unfamiliar scenarios to test transfer, not repetition. And I also linked an article there that kind of goes along with that as well. And then lastly, thinking about jobs of the future. So we think about, what type of jobs were popular, are popular, and will be popular in the future. And so I think about, smartphones and the evolution of smartphones and what technology that allowed, like things like your Ubers and Lyfts and DoorDash and Postmates and Instacart. all those services weren't available before the GPS-enabled smartphones. Um, the gig economy, that's really popped up. The stronger cameras in people's phones, being able to allow people to become their own photographers, has been very powerful. This whole influencer economy, being able to accept mobile payments, helps with non-traditional structured businesses. We think about the mobile gaming industry and the microtransactions that take place. All of this is just getting so much more powerful because of the current phones. But what are some of the careers coming up? I asked our friend ChatGPT this, and it responded that, we're going to have a more personalized everything. You're going to be able to have solo AI powered startups where the personnel involved with needing to start up your own business, those barriers are going to become a lot less. Being able to have on-demand everything. And then it brought up aspects related to climate technology, related to aspects related to construction and retrofitting opportunities due to climate and adapt to different climate change aspects. So kind of interesting of where things are and where things might be going. So that's just a few thoughts on AI. But I bring you here to the last slide, and I can leave this one up here for a little bit. This is my website, brian8944.com. I invite you to connect, see different upcoming projects and presentations that I've got going on. And then that QR code, if you scan it, you'll be able to access today's presentation, and all the links that were referenced. So I'll leave that up here for just a few more seconds, and then I'll stop sharing my screen. Well, once again, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate everyone's time, and I couldn't see everyone's faces during the presentation. So, so if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Oh, thank you, Brian. The one question it's just some of the things you were talking about automating, like your water cooler, things like that. That requires a smart plug, right? Or some kind of something you can plug in. You're not going to get that just plugging into the wall. You need some kind of interface there, right?
Yeah, it's possible that, so many more appliances. It seems like every day there's more and more appliances that have smart capabilities built in.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but I haven't been shopping for a water cooler recently, so I don't know if any of those on the market might have it. But in my case, it's just a smart plug, and the water cooler itself. And so the plug from the water cooler goes into the outlet for the little smart plug, and then the smart plug goes into the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, and once again, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Brian, sticking with the smart plug thing, is that a Belkin that allows you to set a timer on it with the like a Belkin app on the iPhone? Is that how that works?
That one in particular,
Or do
I
you
think
know?
you can go with a lot of different brands.
Oh, okay.
There's several different ones because it's not necessarily specific to what I'm plugging in. It's essentially just you're just cutting power is what you're doing. You're just saying when is this
Oh, I
outlet
see.
receiving power? When is this outlet not receiving power? The
Okay.
particular one that I've used recently, because I'm in a household that's split between using Apple Home and then also using a lot of the A-Lady setups as well. That
Right.
particular one I think might still be on a A-Lady smart plug.
Oh, I see.
Um, but
And
yeah, this you're just basically saying during these hours I want to cut power, during these hours I want the power to be on.
so
Is
it's just like a
essentially
timer on an app.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Essentially,
Okay.
if you think about the old concept of maybe like a Christmas tree or
Right.
lights being on at certain times, just the digital version of that. Yeah.
Right.
Your thermostat for your home, you can program your air conditioning and heating, for your work.
Yeah.
That's
And just
that's
like
on
the
the thermostat itself, though. We've
right,
got
yeah, but I mean, yeah, but it's that kind of a concept, right?
Yeah, I was just curious about the particulars on the plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thermostat is a piece of cake because we've got that. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's all I have. Anybody else?